In Uganda, welcome back from the business desk. It's time for the agenda, and my name is Julie F. Nantaba. We are looking at internet governance in Uganda, and internet governance is a system of rules or policies that govern a nation as to how internet should be used and, of course, govern the world globally in different countries. But what exactly is the state here in Uganda? Do you know the policies that should govern you as you use the internet? Does your member of parliament, especially that the member of parliament, the fact that the member of parliament gets onto that august floor and has to make these policies for you, do they know what entails internet governance? Do these policies favor you as a Ugandan whilst and protect you, not just favor you, but above all protect you, of course, while you exercise your duty and right of using the internet? This is what we are chewing on, and the Uganda Parliamentary Internet Forum, with support from the Civil Society Alliance for Digital Empowerment, CADE, through CIPESA and partners, are enabling us to have this conversation with Honorable Sarah Opendi, who is the chairperson of the Uganda Parliamentary Internet Forum, Internet Governance Forum, for us to get to know the details and the depth of what this means. So let's take a listen. Good morning and welcome to this segment of Good Morning Uganda. My name is Julie F. Nantaba, and we are going to talk about internet governance. Now, if you're to wonder what internet governance is, in simple terms, it's just perhaps a set of rules or procedures or policies governing how internet is to be used overall as it evolves, and that is globally. But in Uganda, the question is, do we even know what internet governance is? But away from you and I knowing what internet governance is, does your MP understand what internet governance is? Why am I saying MP? Because at the end of the day, your MP represents you in or on the august floor and stipulates whatever law there is regarding the internet. But does he or she understand what it is and how it will affect you and myself? Those are many questions that linger, but today we're here to understand that at a much rather deeper level. Now, on the 30th of July, Uganda had its Uganda Parliamentary Intergovernance Forum conference. It ran for a week with different activities and was sealed off with a conference that had very profound discussions. And it's from that conference that we kick it off with Honorable Sarah Opendi, who is very big when it comes to growth, development, internet use, and everything, especially for a country that is as young as Uganda. And she is one we have this morning for this particular conversation. Honorable, it's good to have you.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
Indeed.
To the viewers.
A pleasure having you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here at UBC this time. Not speaking about women, not speaking about the girl child or any other thing, but about internet governance.
Right. I'm not surprised though. Even if it's not the women and the girl child, the internet is still something that would suit you, so I'm not surprised at all. Now, from the last time we were at the conference, and that is the Uganda Parliamentary Internet Governance Forum, with the event that had profound discussions, especially regarding parliamentarians and policies and the whole conversation therein. What did you pick most from that conversation, especially with how parliamentarians engage, interact, or understand what internet governance is?
First of all, we have a new parliament with new members of parliament, quite a good number of new members of parliament. And therefore, it's important that these members of parliament are actually brought on board to understand internet governance, what it is, and the importance. And at the end of the day, that helps them to actually proceed with their role of legislation, their role of oversight, and also representation, even budgeting. So what I picked from that conference is that we still have a lot of work to do as a country because certainly we have laws like the Data Protection Act. We have, for example, the Computer Misuse Act. However, these laws, as you can see, were passed some time back. So we have technology evolving. Every other time there are new things. And the current legislation, the current laws in place do not cover certain new advancements. For example, if you look at artificial intelligence today, our laws do not properly cover that. If you look at issues, you know, around, for example, the TikTok, that space, there is a lot of abuse going on. So we need to actually amend the existing legislations or come up with a completely new law that will clearly govern the artificial intelligence. Yeah.
Very
because
profound.
as you know, AI, as commonly referred to, is actually one that will bring efficiency in different areas, for example, services. However, in bringing, you know, these services, there can also be abuse. But also, most importantly, you realize that artificial intelligence will also create certain disadvantages. We have a growing population, a young population, with close to 75% of the population being young. So we must be cautious about artificial intelligence, or else at the end of the day, what do we do with all this human labor? So those are things that we need to have a candid discussion about. And in the last parliament, actually one of us had come up with a private member's bill on artificial intelligence. Listening to the minister at that conference, she did indicate that they have also realized that they have gaps in existing legislations, and therefore they were coming up with certain amendments, but also a law to actually govern the artificial intelligence. So we'll wait to see what the executive will bring, and of course make our input as key stakeholders in this digital space.
Right. Now, Honorable, you're not only the chairperson of the Uganda Parliamentary Internet Governance Forum, you are also a member of the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance. And not just a member, you are one of the pioneering founders, one of the founders of this network. What exactly is the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance?
The African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance was actually founded by a group of parliamentarians, like-minded parliamentarians, who realized, first of all, that as members of parliament we have a key stake in this space, and most importantly as representatives of the people. But you realize that members of parliament were not anywhere in these conversations regarding, you know, internet governance, and yet we represent people. When laws are brought to the house, how many will understand? And little wonder when you have such a law, people look at it as a very technical piece of legislation, and therefore the house is almost empty. They wouldn't even have or make an input into this. So we came up with this African Parliamentary Internet Governance to bring the voices of members of parliament together, but also equip the members of parliament with the knowledge, the skills, and also, most importantly, the capacity, so that after building the capacity of members of parliament, then we would better represent our people when it comes to legislation, when it comes to oversight, when it comes to even matters of budgeting. Because, you know, when you're in parliament talking about budgets, people look at education, people look at health centers, people look at the roads. Those are tangible things that they look. But the digital space, there is less attention, and one would not even think of putting money there. And yet it's now part and parcel of our lives. And therefore, that's why this APNIG, we call it APNIG, the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance, was formed in 2023, bringing members of parliament on the African continent together, so that we can regularly have engagements, compare what is going on, pick best practices from different countries, and replicate it back home. And actually, now I was at the global level attending meetings. I was at the African continent attending meetings at continental level. So I realized that now what about in a country? And that is how the Uganda Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance was actually formed. We are supposed to bring the new members of parliament on board so that formally we hand over to a new leadership. So that first and foremost, we build the capacity of the members of parliament on internet governance. But also secondly, equip them with the relevant knowledge. They must know about this internet governance, what it is all about. It's not just about people having phones, but it entails a lot. It also entails, for example, advocacy. Because when you look at what is happening now, there are areas you go to in the country and you find that there is no internet, there is no connectivity. So we need the members of parliament to understand that their voices are actually necessary in this digital space to ensure that they push government and other stakeholders, the key players, to connect all parts of the country so that nobody is left behind. Because technology is not just a tool, it's a tool that can spur development in a country. Right. There are people now who are marketing their products, marketing their goods on internet, and actually making a good business through the internet, through those digital spaces. And this is where I want to use this opportunity to actually call upon Ugandans not to waste that space, putting content that does not help. It's useless for anyone to look at having many followers when at the end of the day you're not able to get any profit out of that. It's more important for you to use that space to actually market something so that at the end of the day that helps to build your life and other people's lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Africa's digital space is transforming so fast at such an extreme speed. Why do you think it's important that African parliamentarians at such a point or such a time as this have one voice when it comes to internet governance?
It's quite important because, as I said, we cannot fight the pace at which technology is evolving. We cannot fight it. But what we have to do as members of parliament, I am now out,
right?
But I am still there.
You still have a lot to influence.
Yes, I am still there.
Yes.
So what we need to do as members of parliament is really to ensure that the members of parliament, first of all, your role is legislation. What do you have all the necessary laws? For example, when it comes to data protection, is your country actually protecting people's data? Because there's a lot of data that is actually, pushed out there through the internet. How is this data being used? But also, most importantly, the laws that are in place. Are these laws helping to protect the rights of the children, which for me is very important?
Right.
There is a lot of abuse going on through this digital space. There is a lot of abuse even on the women. For me, it took me time to actually get to that space because of what I was reading. And of course, the fact that somebody had opened, a page on Facebook, Twitter, using my name. So it took me time, and I kept off to try and tell people I am not the one. So there is a lot of abuse. There is a lot of, people imposition, trying to be me, yet it's not me. So these are things that require a law in place. So that's why it's important that we actually understand the challenge, and once you understand the challenge, then you can better legislate, right, and you can better do the oversight role.
Right.
Yes.
There in Honorable, you do point out something rather pertinent, and that is indeed the pace at which technology is evolving, but also the legislative process. In between those two is rather a large gap. How do you think the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance can help bridge this gap for Africa?
No, the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance is far away from the national legislatures. And therefore, as APNIG, what we normally do is to share best practices, what is happening at the global level, what is happening maybe at the continental level, whatever, you know, if country X has come up with this piece of legislation or the other, we are then able to be briefed and told, and then we see whether we have a gap back in our countries. And actually that space helps us, because there are annual conferences that take place. We have, for example, the Global IGF coming to Nairobi. I think it's in November or December. I need to get that clear. We also have another, the African Internet Governance Forum in Ghana, that is also taking place, I think, in November or December. I need to get the dates right. Now, those meetings bring together the different members of parliament from either the continent or beyond. And of course, in those meetings, a lot is shared. First of all, we look at the challenges, the now new emerging, or the challenges that have come up in the last 1 year, and use that to actually now come up with solutions. And then it is the solutions brought at that level that now makes somebody to move back to the country, and then you see where you can actually make a difference. Sometimes in engaging the Ministry of ICT, or sitting as members of parliament under this forum to actually come up with a legislation or amendments to the legislation. I told you about the private members bill on artificial intelligence, but also the gaps in the Computer Misuse Act. There's a lot of abuse going on. I may not have to go there, but there's a lot going on in this country. And as a country that has values, we have family values, we have ethical values, we have morals. We must ensure that that space is not abused by people who want to promote immorality.
Very profound at that, when you stand on the African values therein, and the internet being a global village, one would wonder how easy it will be, but with a collective effort.
No, it is. There are countries where, by the way, you can't, if a country came up with a law, for example, I've talked about the values. We are a sovereign nation.
Right.
If we come up with a law that actually regulates you as a Ugandan, the content that you post there, you'll know the repercussions of posting something that is immoral. I have seen some women, I'm sorry to say this, mothers, grandmothers, posting what, you know, calling themselves singers and using that space to post what is completely unacceptable. So if you have legislation, for example, that actually makes that a serious offense with serious penalties, nobody will do it. But currently, there's nothing, and that's why people are abusing that space. Yeah.
Looking at the challenges that African nations face when it comes to internet use, quite all of them are the same, if you must say. Looking at examples, of course, of AI and its governance, every African country is facing that problem. Looking at internet shutdowns, I believe this is no news to African countries. Looking at cybersecurity, pretty much the same story for every African country. How do you think the African Parliamentary Internet Forum is able to help African countries have a coherent voice when it comes to finding solutions to internet problems?
The best, of course, for UPNIG is to ensure that having identified the problem, we pick best practices from other countries that have advanced with this technology. Unfortunately, while AI is just getting into some of our nations, it has been there in other countries.
Right.
So we, in those meetings as UPNIG, you know, we have facilitators that share with us what has happened in those other countries that developed much earlier or had this artificial intelligence, and how they've been able to actually regulate it. So we pick best practices from the global IGF, and of course that's how we are able to advocate back home. Yeah.
Indeed, it's such a pleasure speaking with you, Honorable. And in case you're just joining in, we're looking at internet governance. And of course, that is for Uganda, but how it also connects to the rest of the world. Honorable, let's look at this vision of having the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance relating with the Uganda chapter and overall board relating with the UN Global Chapter. How do you envision this relationship in the next 3 to 5 years?
It's actually growing, and actually it's part of the conversation we are trying to have currently with those vying for the position of Secretary General. Right. Secretary General of the United Nations. And we have tried to put this forward, that voices of parliamentarians are actually should also be heard at the UN level. So you are aware about the Digital Compact. We actually were, it was a pleasure for us to have also, you know, been part of that as APNIG. So currently that is as far as we have gone. However, there is need for members of parliament, the current Secretary Generals. We are putting this to them, that parliamentarians need to have space at the United Nations, much as it's usually the governments, the executive, but as representatives of the people, there must be a way. We shouldn't simply be accompanying parliamentarians, should not merely be accompanying ministers to such meetings, or even sitting back and watching from a distance, but we should be part and parcel of what goes on there. So it's important, and of course for me, 3-5 years from now, I really see a united Africa. We are now, fortunately, the African Union has come up with the framework on internet governance. So it's important for us as APNIG to really push and ensure that this framework on internet governance passed at the African Union level is actually replicated back in our countries. How many countries actually have, you know, regulatory frameworks on this space that we are talking about? You realize that not all of us. So it's important for us 3-5 years from now to ensure that all the African nations actually have legislations in country that govern this space. Right.
Looking back at the forum conference that took place on 30th July, the Uganda Parliamentary Internet Governance Forum Conference, what action points do you expect from the 12th Parliament moving forward?
The key action point that I expect from the 12th Parliament is to ensure that they push the executive to bring the amendments to the existing legislation. As the minister pledged that they were going to sit back and ensure that they amend the Computer Misuse Act, also considering that some of the provisions were struck off by court. So they need to look at that. But also, most importantly, I expect that members of the 12th Parliament to play a more critical role in doing their oversight work over this internet governance space. And it shouldn't be left to the committee alone. When you have a forum, the forum goes beyond the committees. That's why we created this Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Internet Governance, because not everyone can belong to the ICT committee. You may belong to another committee but be part of the forum, because, as I said, internet is part and parcel of our lives today. And therefore everybody, every member of parliament should actually be concerned, but also should be able to advocate to ensure that issues of inclusion are actually dealt with. Everybody should be in this, should be able to access internet wherever they are. We shouldn't have parts of the country where we don't have internet. So what is the reason for that? I know that as government, we rely heavily on the other stakeholders like MTN, Airtel, and other service providers. We need to ensure that these other stakeholders who are providing this, you know, internet, do it without focusing on areas that are profitable, but ensure that they are pushed to extend the services to all parts of the country, because they are the key players actually. MTN, Airtel, right. Uganda Telecom, of course, it is still at a low scale, but we need to ensure that there is inclusion, everybody is able to access the internet, and we be able to achieve the sustainable development goals that we all yearn for.
All right.
And 2030 is close approaching.
Indeed. And in that same spirit, what message would you have for members of parliament who still look at internet governance as just a technical issue rather than an issue of governance and human rights?
My appeal to the members of parliament is, I will leave them with 3 messages. The first key message is to ensure that we do not, the issue of freedom of speech, freedom of expression must be real. However, we must ensure that it is also not abused, because that is a constitutional right. But also, most importantly, as members of parliament should know that this internet space should be looked at as a developmental issue. It shouldn't be looked at as just something for communicating, but it can actually bring a lot of development to your region, to your area. So look at it as a developmental matter and handle it the same way you are handling other matters like roads, like health centers, like education. Because as I said, the internet is part and parcel of our lives today, and therefore nobody should be left behind. But of course, lastly, I talk about what I'm very passionate about, the issue of values as a nation. We have our values as a country. We must ensure that even in these spaces, those values are respected. And most importantly, the children need to be protected. There is a lot of abuse going on. Let us ensure that this space is safe for everyone. And let us ensure, some countries have gone ahead to actually, you can't access a smartphone before you're 15. These are conversations that the 12th Parliament must pick up, because children are actually receiving a lot of content that they should not be receiving. So as parents give them these gadgets, as parents, sit back and think that the phones, the smartphones should be the parents of the children, they must know that it is their responsibility to actually undertake the parenting role. Let technology not replace our parents. Let technology not become the teacher of morals of our children. Right. Otherwise, as a nation, we shall lose it all.
Right. Honorable, we are obviously closing this, but when you talk about things that you're passionate about and values being in there, I know women and children are part of this, and Uganda being one of the youngest countries, Africa that is also one of the youngest continents in age, and obviously young people use the internet a lot. How do you think UPIGF is going to empower young people to be at the table of influence when it comes to making these policies, but also not just young people, women, children, of course not yet, but there are people who speak for them, women and people with disabilities, persons with disabilities. How best do you think they can be at the table of influence in regards to making these policies? As the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance, it's quite important that the regulation of this space is actually promoted. But also, most importantly, even if we talk about regulation, let us ensure that in our education system, children are actually taught, learn these skills on technological skills. They can learn, but in a regulated manner. So, and when they are taught at an early age that this space can be useful, use this space to innovate, use this space to, create something that will at the end of the day be useful not only to yourself but to the citizens. That's how we shall see the young population knowing that internet is actually space that one should use to actually better their lives. One should use that space to actually earn income and not use that space to gossip and engage in immoral acts. So as UPIGF, ours is really regulation. As UPIGF, ours is legislation. That's what we shall promote. But of course, most importantly, let's not forget the issue of oversight. Right.
Yeah.
We do thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure always having you. And this comes to the end. And for UBC TV, my name is Julie F. Nantaba. Keep on being inspired by UBC. All right, welcome back from that conversation with Honorable Sarah Opendi on internet governance in Uganda, looking at policies and laws, what they should look like. And I think the highlights from that conversation for me that I believe stood out for you as well, but you could share those highlights as well. Allow me, before I even get into what stood out, allow me read a comment from someone who said that, "Good morning, Julie. You are loud and clear here in Karamoja. My concern is that Honorable, it seems MTN and others, or anyway, mobile telecom services, are cheating the population. Where do my own minutes," this is the author, "where do my own minutes and MBs go when they expire? And why must they give people pressure to use the minutes and MBs?" That is a very pertinent question, looking into data protection. And one of the pointers that Honorable did share and highlight, when it comes to internet governance, do the members of parliament even understand who takes our data and how is the data of Ugandans protected? We don't have laws when it comes to governing AI and the use of platforms like TikTok therein. It's some of the things that she pointed out, but she pointed out the fact that how many MPs will understand the language of internet, the knowledge of it, skills, capacity therein when it comes to internet governance. And of course, that means that when they understand, they are well able to legislate, give oversight and budget in the digital space, and also pay more attention to the digital space with the same energy as is when it comes to matters road tourism or even hospitals and medicines in hospitals. But she also talked about the fact that it's useless for you, a Ugandan who's on TikTok day in, day out, or Instagram, having many followers and likes, but having no profit from that. Utterly useless. But she did emphasize the protection of people's data, the data of Ugandans, and also the protection of children's rights. As it is, we've seen the wave, many countries in the Europe are protecting children where before the age of 16 or under the age of 16, you're not allowed to engage using social media, but Uganda doesn't have clarity on that, and protecting children's rights is rather pertinent, but also protecting the vulnerability of women on the internet. And of course, freedom of speech and freedom of expression, be real at that and not abused on the internet. Very important points there, and a conversation that requires the engagement of the 12th Parliament as to internet governance in Uganda. We do appreciate you for being part of the show. Ruben is coming up with the sports update here on Good Morning Uganda. We close it here, but before I end it, allow me to remind you of the USEA National Solar Expo by Winnie Fachi. That is the project lead of AeroLove Uganda initiative. The conference and expo, Solar Expo, National Solar Expo, is taking place, started on the 26th, and it's at Silver Springs Hotel, Bogolobi, under the theme Powering Productivity with Solar Energy, one initiative, and it's showing how solar can feed Uganda. The AeroLove Uganda initiative is showcasing its solar-powered agri-hubs, drone-based crop monitoring and e-mobility solutions, linking smallholder farmers to markets. And according to the executive director, that is Winnie Fachi, AeroLove Uganda uses solar to power irrigation, cold storage and e-trikes for last-mile farmers with limited internet, proving that solar is not just light, but productivity, food security, and green jobs. It's a 3-day expo, which is free entry, and it ends on the 28th of August with innovative exhibitions, investor matchmaking, and the USEA Solar Awards to be given therein. So make sure that you go to Silver Springs Hotel and do enjoy this free source offered to you. For now, we close it here. It is always for God and my country. Good morning.
all over Africa. Welcome everyone.